Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 4, Chapter 16 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 3 of our coverage of this chapter.
Part 3. Gee whiz. We ought to get on with it. I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I'm sure some people are like, how
get on with
much are you going to drag this out?
This is not for y'all. This is for the excruciating minutia people. This is for not the synopsis folks.
We're looking for those single sentences that change our entire understanding of the situation.
That is precisely what this is about. And this podcast series is also intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe, looking for that beautiful sentence. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy story ever written, and we're approaching it from a purely fanboy point of view. No critique will be offered. We'll continue to marvel at Mr. Erikson's amazing series of books, and let's face it, Deadhouse Gates is a marvel.
I agree. My favorite.
I get it. It's mine right now.
Right. You say that with every book that we're reading.
I do.
And I don't expect that to change.
Right. Hey, at least I'm consistent.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence, and it's not recommended for children. Heck, I may be too young for this.
Oh yeah, there's some rough stuff today.
It's pretty bad.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, so send any feedback or comments that you have to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right, I have a correction to make. Recently, Mr. Erikson was interviewed by a YouTube channel, and he said Jagoot instead of Jaghut.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I've been saying Jaghut for the whole time we're covering these books.
How did he say Jaghut?
Jagoot is kind of what it sounded like.
Like runs it on together real quick?
Yes.
Okay.
So I am going to have to make sure that I pronounce it correctly from now on. It may take a couple tries.
Okay.
Sorry, there's no way for me to retroactively go back and fix all the mispronunciations thus far.
We are not worthy. We are not worthy, Mr. Erikson. I'm so sorry. We are so
we'll
sorry.
Roll with it.
Yes.
From what I've heard, he doesn't really care about pronunciation. In fact, he likes
great.
to hear how people say the different things. But
Okay.
I do like to adopt whatever pronunciation he does use when I hear it.
Correct.
So Krupp, that's another one where I was saying Kruppa.
Yes.
Yeah, he does Krupp.
Duiker.
Duiker, that was another one.
That's a big one.
Because I was saying Diker, I think, initially.
Well, dude, Ralph Lister says Diker through the whole book. I mean, get out of here, son.
And then Felicin.
Yeah.
I think that's how he says it. Yeah.
Yeah,
those are the big ones so far.
Yeah, every time you have discovered it, we have adopted Mr. Erikson's pronunciation.
All right. Chapter 16, Part 3. We go to Duiker and the Chain of Dogs. Gessler strode to where Duiker, Bolt, and Captain Lull sat drinking tea. Gessler's face was red and swollen around the fractured nose, his voice a rough whine. Reminder that Coltane clocked Gessler and broke both Gessler's nose and his own hand in the process.
Shattered his hand.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
He's a tough guy, too.
I'd rather have been Gessler in this exchange.
You think so?
Yeah, Gessler just got his nose broke, man.
Just got his nose broke? His whole face is deformed now because...
Sure, but man, I'm thinking that old Coltane's hand. When I hear shattered, I'm like, man, that's like punching a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
I'm imagining all those nice tiny bones in there just being fractured and shattered, and just like, oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, having a hand injury is really tough. I injured my pinky a couple weeks ago in jiu-jitsu, and it's on my non-primary hand.
Okay,
it's still causing me all kinds of problems.
Wow. I get it.
You don't realize how much you use stuff until you can't use it as well as usual.
Oh, yeah. That's bad.
So having the whole hand disabled as opposed to just one digit, that'd be pretty rough.
It would be.
Gessler said, "We can't pack no more aboard, so we're pulling out to catch the last of the tide." Lull asked, "How quickly can those undead oarsmen take you to Erin?" Gessler said, "Won't be long. 3 days at the most. Don't worry, we won't lose any of the wounded on the way, sir." Lull asked, "What makes you so certain of that, Corporal?" Gessler said, "Things are kind of timeless on the Solanda, sir. All those heads still drip blood, only they ain't been attached to their bodies for months, years, maybe even decades. Nothing rots, sir. Feiner's tusk. We can't even grow beards when we're aboard, sir." Lull grunted. And that's interesting, The stasis appears to affect the entirety of the Salanda, not just the Tist-Andi and the others that have had their heads chopped off.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that might be the case a little bit when they talk about the captain's chambers, where you have those bodies that are complete down there and they're kind of frozen in time.
Good point.
Yeah, I assumed something was going on there. I just didn't know what it was until they spell it out for us.
Yeah, that's well said. I hadn't considered how that room was frozen with the blood dripping down into their lap with the spear impaling the captain in his chair. Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder how it works for the people that spend time on the vessel. Do they age slower than those in the outside world? Does time not pass at all for them?
I'm thinking it doesn't pass. I mean, I'm thinking that if you could sit there, if you had the patience to sit there, park that thing and hide it somewhere, you could sit there and watch time pass by, and maybe not, while you're doing things and hanging out on the ship, but you could just watch time pass by you quite literally while not aging. Be locked in some, but as minute you step off, I don't think things have to catch up, but I think you step off, then it starts again. The clock starts for you again.
That's crazy.
That's really trippy.
Because I think about situations where you take some books, you expand your knowledge, or you sit there and you're working out and you get in really good shape. The ability to freeze time and have it run for everybody else, and then you come out and you're leveling up while everybody else
You've leveled up.
Yeah, I mean, potentially they could be leveling up too.
They would be, but they would be leveling up and aging. You would still be the same.
That's the thing, right? Is like all of your friends, all of your family, if they're not with you, they're going through the normal thing. So it's almost like Interstellar, where time dilution was happening. Right. You've seen Interstellar, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar concept.
Yeah, very much so. I hadn't thought about it like that.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah, all that time happening around you, but you not being in it.
Yeah. In that case, time is happening for everybody. It's just happening at a different rate. In this case, it almost seems like it's not happening at all on the Salanda.
Like I said, the crazy thing about that is that because the Salanda is just a thing, as long as you're on it, things don't change for you. But you could still, you're still present in a way everywhere. I mean, it's not like you're pulled out of the time stream necessarily when you're I mean, you kind of are when you're on deck, I guess, when you're on the ship, but you step off, you're just back in the normal time stream.
It's one of those mind-bending things to try to think about the implications of something like that existing.
I love time travel stuff, dude. I watch bad time travel stuff. There's kind of a fun one on Netflix. Have you ever seen it? ARQ?
I have not seen that.
It's got one of the MLs in there. It's one of the Arrow. It's one of the guys, the guy that plays the Arrow's cousin. He's developed something. It's some kind of form of energy. And these guys come into his house and do some crazy stuff, and then he ends up getting killed. And it's Groundhog Days him. And he keeps Groundhog Daying it until he gets out of it. And him and this woman that he's with, and she's not aware of it at first. And then certain things happen that other people become aware that they're in this loop as well.
Oh, okay.
So it becomes a little more strange. It's great. I love a good action pick. And throwing some time loopy Groundhog Day kind of stuff on it, please, I'm all over it.
So that would be really weird to have multiple people aware that the time loop is happening, because if one person is trying to perfect the day from their perspective, okay. But then if you add other variables in, like other people trying to change things, then it would be really difficult to manage that situation.
Yes. It gets very out of hand very quick. It's very fun.
Okay.
I recommend it.
All right.
It's not a great flick. It's just entertaining, but it's good fun.
Yeah, when we start talking about time stuff, I go to Tenet.
I need to rewatch Tenet because that one messed me up so bad the first time I've only watched it once. And I watched it with a guy from Fry's, as a matter of fact. He came over to the house. We used to watch movies on Sundays. This is after Deb passed. And we watched it and we sat there. Well, first off, the audio was so bad you had to watch subtitles.
Yes.
But the worst part is that when it's over, I looked at him like, did you understand that? I'm not sure what happened. So I need to watch it again.
I've watched it twice. The second time I did put a little bit more together. Okay. But even seeing a visual diagram of that movie was not enough to make it make sense to me. Legitimately, because I think it's like 5 overlapping timelines or something. And for them to come up with that conceptually is incredible. It's too much.
Yeah.
They're literally playing 4D chess. Stuff going backwards, stuff going forwards. It's pretty crazy.
It was crazy. I need to watch it again. KP won't watch it. She hates Pattinson.
You know, when he was the face of Twilight, I wasn't particularly in love with him as an actor, but he's really proven himself to be a really great actor. Like the Batman that he played was
that
awesome.
Good?
Yes. I went in with super low expectations and I came out, I was like, man, This is a really good movie.
Okay, okay. Because I've not seen him in anything, but I don't have this aversion to him. I've not seen Twilight. I will never. I'm sorry. I do not intend to watch Twilight, so I have no intention. But there's been a couple things I've wanted to watch, like because I love David Cronenberg. He did Cosmopolis.
Yeah, I started watching that, and
Is
the
that too
movie
weird?
itself didn't interest me. Yeah, it was too
Okay.
weird. I'm trying to remember what other stuff I've seen Pattinson in.
Is it Good Time? I want to see Good Time. I've heard that's a really bad one where it's like a really bad day for him. He's a robber or a thief or something, and him and his brother or friend or thieves, and then his friend is captured by the bad guy, and he has to get all this taken care of and get his friend
I haven't
saved.
seen that.
I haven't either.
No.
I've been told he's great though.
I think it's Tenet and then the Batman movie that kind of cemented it for me.
I liked him in Tenet.
Those two movies.
That
Yeah,
made me
I
like
thought he
him.
did a great job.
That made me like him.
All right, moving along. Wow, we got into the time and then
Sorry.
jumped a couple layers there.
Yeah, we did. I'm sorry. That's what you pay us for, folks. We're professionals. We are professional. I'm sorry. I was going to Lebowski for you there to make it worse. I'm professional.
I am
I
expert.
am expert. There he is.
No, did he say ich bin expert?
Oh,
That's what he said, right?
Yeah, it's ich bin expert.
It was an hour before dawn. The sounds of frenzied activity rising from Corbolo Dom's encampment had not ceased. Sorceress wards prevented the Wiccan warlocks from discovering the nature of that activity. The lack of knowing had stretched everyone's nerves taut. Gessler said, "Feigner guard you all." Duiker looked up to meet his eyes and said, "Deliver our wounded, Corporal." Gessler said, "Aye, Historian, we'll do just that. And maybe we can even pry Nock's fleet out of the harbor, or shame Pormqual into marching. The captain of the city garrison's a good man, Blistig. If he wasn't responsible for the protection of Aaron, he'd be here by now. Anyway, maybe the two of us can put some iron into the High Fist's spine." Lull muttered, "As you say. Get on with you now, Corporal. You're almost as ugly as me, and it's turning my stomach." Gessler said, "Got more than a few spare Tist-Andy eyes if you'd like to try one out for a fitting, sir. Last chance." I wonder how that would work. Would the eye rot after being taken off the ship?
You mean if it wasn't implanted in him? Yeah, sure.
Implanted, what, like sorceress
Yeah,
surgery?
yeah.
Oh,
I bet maybe they could do something with that. I don't know.
do they do transplants in the Malazan world?
I thought they were able to grow a limb. No, they would have done that. Would have done it for Dujek, would they have?
I imagine so.
I would imagine so. So I don't think they can go that far. So I don't think growing extras. You could maybe grow the eyeball, but would it work? I don't know. But if you could maybe stick someone else's working one in there with some sword, yeah, I could see them doing something sorcerously.
I was thinking maybe they're thinking it won't rot because it has the stasis spell on it.
Maybe.
So they could just put it in his head and then it would use his own biology to lubricate the socket or something. I don't know. Regardless.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Moving along. Lull said, "I'll pass, Corporal, but thanks for the offer." Gessler said, "Don't mention it. Fare you well, Historian. Sorry we couldn't have done better with Culp and Hebrick." Duiker said, "You did better than anyone could have hoped for, Gessler." With a shrug, Gessler turned toward the waiting dory. Then he paused and said, "Oh, Commander Bolt." Bolt said, "Aye?" Gessler said, "My apologies to the Fist for breaking his hand." Bolt said, "Sormo's managed to force heal that, Corporal, but I'll pass your thoughts on." Gessler said, "You know, Commander, I just noticed, between you and the captain, you got 3 eyes and 3 ears and almost a whole head of hair." Bolt swung around to glare at Gessler and asked, "Your point?" Gessler said, "Nothing. Just noticing, sir. See you all in Aaron." Duiker watched Gessler row his way across the yellow sludge of the river. He thought, "See you all in Aaron." That was feeble, Corporal Gessler, but well enough meant. And a reminder that yellow sludge is all the dead butterflies getting washed downstream. Lull sighed, "For the rest of my days, I'll know Gessler as the man who broke his nose to spite his face." Bolt grinned, tossed the dregs of his tea onto the muddy ground, and rose with a crackling of joints. He said, "Nephew will like that one, Captain." Duiker looked up and asked, "Was it just a matter of mistrust, Uncle?" Bolt stared down for a moment, then shrugged and said, "Coltane would tell you it was so, Historian." Duiker asked, "But what do you think?" Bolt said, "I'm too tired to think. If you are determined to know the Fist's thoughts on Corbolo Dom's offer, you might try asking him yourself." They watched Bolt walk away. Lull grunted, "Can't wait to read your account of the chain of dogs, old man. Too bad I didn't see you send a trunk full of scrolls with Gessler." Duiker climbed to his feet and said, "It seems nobody wants to hold hands this night." Lull said, "Might have better luck tomorrow night." Duiker admitted, "Might." Lull said, "Thought you'd found a woman, a Marine. What was her name?" Duiker said, "I don't know. We shared one night." Lull quipped, "Ah, sword too small for the sheath, eh?" Duiker smiled and said, "We decided it would not do to repeat that night. We each have enough losses to deal with." Lull said, "You are both fools then." Duiker said, "I imagine we are." Duiker set off through the restless, sleepless encampment. He heard few conversations, yet a bleak awareness roared around him, a sound only his bones could feel. When you read this last sentence about a bleak awareness roaring around Duiker and it being a sound only his bones can feel, how do you interpret that?
I'm guessing that is that a statement of just how heavy-minded he is? It's like depressed. It's really, heavy sadness pressing down on him.
Yeah, he's definitely feeling how tired everybody is and how worn down.
Tired, worn down, hopeless, all that.
So when he's talking about sensing this bleak awareness, it does make me think that it's possibly projection.
Yeah.
Right? He's feeling this in his bones, but I don't necessarily know that everybody's feeling it, because we did see some examples of the Marines playing some type of catch a ball type thing. There seem to be signs that the soldiers, they're just doing their jobs like they always do.
Yeah, they're trying to. Well, you got to have a look to succeeding. No one's wanting to die out here. It's probably a real possibility, probably a sure possibility for the most part, but they've made it this far. So some of the folks actually, I'm like you, some of them seem to be trying their best to keep things kind of normal.
Yeah, some of them are thinking that they're going to make it out alive, and then there's others that don't see that possibility.
Yeah.
And then there was the comment about Coltane. He was dragging them into victory, basically, right?
Yeah.
Making them do the impossible.
Yeah.
That was that first river crossing. I think Duiker was talking about it, how he was making them do things that
impossible.
Absolutely were impossible.
He has pulled off the impossible so much that nothing seems impossible. Probably I think that's probably, I'm sure that has something to do with, I think some of these people have that feeling that we might survive this, because it's like, holy crap, we've survived. We've been alive this long on the run. We're going to make it. We're not that much further. We're a lot closer there than we were 6 months ago. We're almost there, comparatively speaking.
This kind of reminds me of sometimes when you're doing a really hard workout and it's not like a self-directed workout. Somebody's making you do it.
Okay.
And you know that you're not halfway done, but you already feel done. This kind of makes me think about, you do have more in you. Your body doesn't want to do it, but you can force yourself to do it if you dig deep enough. And this kind of feels the same to me, in that they have repeatedly thought they didn't have it in them, yet somehow they managed to pull through, because Coltane knows they have more in them.
Yes.
Duiker found Coltane outside his command tent, conferring with Sormo, Nil, and Nether. Coltane's right hand was still swollen and mottled, and his pale, sweat-beaded face revealed the trauma of forced healing. And that goes back to Gardens of the Moon, where Mallet was explaining how healing the soul and the flesh is required. And skipping the healing of the soul leads to side effects on the individual.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the faster that the healing is, the more that is a problem. You don't have time.
I would agree.
Yeah, you don't have time to process what's going on. It probably causes shock, and I think they kind of covered that a bit. But remember, the Shadow Throne's healing of Perrin did not seem to do that to Perrin in Gardens of the Moon, if I recall correctly.
He handled it like a champ. There may be some signs that he has some trauma, but overall, he's very strong mentally. He's able to handle a lot. That's the only reason why, given what he went through, he hasn't lost his mind with that force healing, I think.
Yes. Well, think about him laying there at the gates of death and just kind of being lippy while laying there, can't move, can't do nothing. I mean, he's got a lip on him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right.
I think that's one of the earlier times where I was like, man, I'm really starting to like him.
Yes. We just fell in love with Perrin on this reread of Gardens, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely more so than at that stage in earlier read-throughs.
Yes.
I think eventually I always came around to liking him, given some of his exploits, but never this early.
Yes. Yeah, I always gloss him. I just gloss past him a lot. Yeah. He kind of irritates me. But it's like, I love the guy now.
Sormo addressed Duiker. He asked, "Where is your corporal list?" Duiker blinked and said, "I am not sure. Why?" Sormo said, "He is possessed of visions." Duiker said, "Aye, he is." Sormo's gaunt face twisted in a grimace. He said, "We sense nothing of what lies ahead. A land so emptied is unnatural, historian. It has been scoured, its soul destroyed. How?" Duerker explained, "List says there was a war once, out on the plain beyond the forest, so long ago that all memory of it has vanished. Yet an echo remains, sealed in the very bedrock." Sormo asked, "Who fought this war, historian?" Duerker said, "Yet to be revealed, I'm afraid. A ghost guides List in his dreams, but it will be no certain unveiling." Duerker hesitated, then sighed. "The ghost is Jagut."
Nice.
Got it.
Got it. Nailed it. Nailed it.
Coltane glanced east and seemed to study the paling skyline. After a moment, Duerker said, "Fist Corbolo Dom." Duerker was interrupted by a commotion nearby. They turned to see a nobleman rushing toward them. Duerker frowned, then recognition came. He said, "Tumlet." Tumlet, squinting fiercely as he scanned each face, finally came to a halt before Coltane. He gasped, "A most dreadful occurrence, Fist." Duerker only now heard a restlessness rising from the refugee encampment. He said, "Tumlet, what has happened?" Tumlet said, "Another emissary, I'm afraid, brought through in secret, met with the council. I sought to dissuade them, but failed, alas. Pulik and Nethpara have swayed the others. Fist, the refugees shall cross the river, under the benign protection of Corbolo Dom." Fools!
Agreed. Hood's breath, man. Get these guys. These guys go. No, this is a trap. But this is this is roughly my sixth time ish going through this. This never ceases to infuriate me at these people here.
Yeah, as we're about to see, bad idea.
Bad idea. Anything those fellas do is a bad idea.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Except for apparently making money.
Right. They're good at that.
They're rich somehow. At the expense of others, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Coltane spun to his warlocks and said, "To your clans, send Bolt and the captains to me." Shouts now sounded from the Wiccans in the clearing as the mass of refugees surged forward, pushing through down to the ford. Coltane found a nearby soldier and said, "Have the clan war chiefs withdraw their warriors from their path. We cannot contest this." Duerker thought, "He's right. We won't be able to stop the fools." Yeah, I imagine that would amount to a stampede pretty much.
Absolutely. That'd be a bad deal.
Have you ever been on the floor of a really big concert?
I have, but the ones I attended to, the floor was maintained well, where there was not any issues of stampeding kind of stuff.
The big one that I went to, it was the Summer Sanitarium Tour in 2003. So I had Metallica, Limp Bizkit, and Linkin Park. And when Metallica was getting ready to come on the stage, everything started pushing forward and you couldn't move. There was nothing you could do. And we were probably, I'd say 50 feet back from the front of the stage, and the whole crowd just kept pushing forward. This was on the floor of the Reliant Stadium in Houston, which was an 80,000 person stadium, so there's quite a few people down in there. Yeah. And this girl next to us passed out. They had to carry her out. But yeah, that's without any panic.
Right.
So imagine if something had happened in that scenario, I don't even want to think about what it would have been like. Well, because it was already bad enough.
Right. Well, the one that always comes to mind when you speak of concerts is the Who in '79. It's called the Who concert disaster of 1979. 10 were killed in a stampede there. They were crushed against the stage by the people pushing forward. And the other one in 20, there's lots more apparently, but the one I just saw to tie this up is odd because there's another 10 dead in Astroworld in 2021. Travis Scott, whoever, I think I've read he's a young rapper. I'm not familiar with him.
Yes. Yeah. I remember this. Yeah.
I was shocked to read that was that recent. There was a 10 dead and so close. I mean, you live right there.
That one was weird. I think that was people were breaking in. So there was more people than they were prepared to handle. They were bypassing the security to get in.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly where the stampede happened. If it was around it was during the concert, I think, right?
I didn't read a whole lot more. I just got the quick synopsis. I was shocked that I hadn't heard about it.
All right, moving along. Bolt and the captains arrived in a rush, and Coltane snapped out his commands. Those orders made it clear to Duerker that Coltane was preparing for the worst. As the officers raced off, Coltane faced Duerker and said, "Go to the sappers. By my command, they are to join the refugee train, insignia and uniforms exchanged for mundane garb." Duerker said, "That won't be necessary, Fist. They all wear assorted rags and looted gear anyway, but I'll have them tie their helms to their belts." Why am I not surprised in the least by this, that they are not clothed in what they're supposed to be wearing?
Well, I mean, They probably blow most of it off of them in some way or another, and through their exposure to chemicals and acids and all that stuff and explosions. They're pretty fond of that. So I'm assuming that we lose our clothes a lot in that the business of theirs, and also they're the elites, so they're probably swapping uniforms just to sneak up on folks and during their reconnoitering that they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have an example of that later.
We'll talk about it when we get to that.
Okay.
Coltane said, "Go." Duiker set off. The sky was lightning, and with the burgeoning glow, the butterflies stirred on all sides, a silent shimmering that sent shivers through Duiker for no obvious reason. He worked his way up the seething train, skirting one edge and pushing through the ranks of infantry who were standing back and watching the refugees without expression.
Boy, could you have any more alliteration in that one? Silent shimmering sent shivers through... I'm sorry. That's rough.
Yeah, tongue twister for sure.
Yeah. Almost as bad as she sells seashells by the seashore. So,
Duiker spied a ragtag knot of soldiers seated well back from the trail, almost at the edge of the flanking picket line. The company ignored the refugees and seemed busy with the task of coiling ropes. A few glanced up as Duiker arrived. Duiker said, "Coltane commands you join the refugees. No arguments. Take off your helms, now." A squat, wide soldier muttered, "Who's arguing?" Duiker demanded, "What are you planning with the ropes?" The sapper looked up and said, "We did some reconnoitering of our own, old man. Now if you'd shut up, we can get ready, right?" Sounds like we found him, the fabled leader of the sappers.
Is he the leader?
He's the only one talking. I don't know that it's the captain, if that captain exists, but it is probably whoever is in charge of them at this
moment.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. 3 soldiers appeared from the forest side, approaching at a jog. One carried a severed head by its braid, trailing threads of blood. The man said, "This one's done his last nod at post," and dropped his prize to thud and roll on the ground. No one else took notice, nor did the 3 sappers report to anyone. The entire company seemed to complete their preparations all at once. Ropes around one shoulder, helms strapped to belts, crossbows readied, then hidden beneath loose raincapes and talaban. In silence, they rose and began making their way toward the mass of refugees. Duiker hesitated. He turned to look down at the crossing. The head of the refugee column had pushed out into the ford, which was proving waist-deep, at least 40 paces wide, its bottom thick, cloying mud. Butterflies swarmed above the mass of humanity in sunlit explosions of pallid yellow. A dozen Wiccan horse warriors had been sent ahead to guide the column. Behind them came the wagons of the noble blood, the only refugees staying dry and above the chaotic tumult. Duiker glanced over at the surging train where the sappers had gone, but they were nowhere to be seen, swallowed up in the crowds. From somewhere farther up the trader track came the terrible lowing of cattle being slaughtered. And remember, this was the end of the line for all the livestock. Beyond the river, they had no way of sustaining them.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, because I think they keep talking about the land being lifeless, no grasses or anything for them to eat, and water is even going to be harder to come by.
Yeah, and even Sormo was talking about the fact that there's just nothing. I can't even feel life almost there.
The flanking infantry were readying weapons. Coltane was clearly anticipating a rearguard defense of the landing. Still, Duiker hesitated. If he joined the refugees and the worst came to pass, the ensuing panic would be as deadly as any slaughter visited upon them by Corbollo Dom's forces. He thought, "Hood's breath. We are not truly at that bastard's mercy." A hand closed on his arm, and he spun around to see his nameless marine at his side. She said, "Come on, into the mob. We're to support the sappers." Duiker said, "In what? Nothing has befallen the refugees yet, and they're near to halfway across." She said, "Aye, and look at the heads turning to look downstream. The rebels have made a floating bridge. No, you can't see it from here, but it's there, packed with pikemen." Duiker said, "Pikemen? Doing what?" She said, "Watching, waiting. Come on, lover, the nightmare's about to begin." And that's a nasty thought. They built a bridge to spear any refugees that are washed downstream.
Yeah.
Corbollo is certainly ruthless.
Absolutely ruthless.
What a mess this is going to be, man.
Yeah, this is going to be nasty.
They joined the massive refugees, entered that human current as it poured down toward the landing. A sudden roar and muted clash of weapons announced that the rearguard had been struck. The tide's momentum increased. Packed within that jostling chaos, Duiker could see little to either side or behind, but the slope ahead was revealed, as was the river Vathar itself, which they seemed to be sweeping toward with the swiftness of an avalanche. The entire ford was packed with refugees, Along the edges, people were being pushed into deeper water. Duerker saw bobbing heads and arms struggling in the sludge, the current dragging them ever closer to the pikemen on the bridge. A great cry of dismay rose from those on the river, faces now turning upstream to see something Duerker could not yet see. The dozen horse warriors gained the clearing on the opposite bank. He watched them frantically knocking arrows as they turned toward the line of trees farther up the bank. Then the Wiccans were reeling, toppled from their mounts, feathered shafts jutting from their bodies. Horses screamed and went down. The nobles' wagons clacked and clattered ashore, then stopped as the oxen pulling them sank down beneath a swarm of arrows. The ford was blocked. There we go.
Yes, sir.
Panic now gripped the refugees, descending in a human wave down to the landing. Bellowing, Duerker was helpless as he was carried along into the yellow-smeared water. He caught a glimpse of what approached from upstream, another floating bridge, packed with pikemen and archers. Crews on both banks gripped ropes, guiding the bridge as the current drew it ever closer to the ford. Arrows ripped through the clouds of whirling butterflies, descended on the mass of refugees. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to go. Duerker found himself within a nightmare. All around him, unarmored civilians died in that ghastly whisper and clatter. The mob surged in every direction now, caught in terrified, helpless eddies. Children vanished underfoot, trampled down in the turbid water. A woman fell back against Duerker. He wrapped his arms around her in an effort to keep her upright, then saw the arrow that had driven through the babe in her arms, then into her chest. He cried out in horror. The Marine appeared at his side, thrusting a reach of rope into his hands. She shouted, "Grab this! Hold on tight! We're through! Don't let go!" He twisted the rope around his wrist. He twisted the rope around his wrists. Ahead of the Marine, the strand stretched on, between the heaving bodies and out of sight. He felt it tighten, was pulled forward. Arrows rained down ceaselessly. One grazed Duerker's cheek, another bounced from the leather-sheathed chain protecting his shoulder. He wished to every god that he had donned his helm instead of tying it at his belt, from which it had long since been torn free and lost. The pressure of the rope was steady, relentless, dragging him through the mob, over people and under them. More than once he was pulled down under the water, only to rise again half a dozen paces later, choking and coughing. At one point, as he went over the top of the seething press, he caught the flash of sorcery from somewhere ahead, a thundering wave, then was yanked back down, twisting his shoulder to slide roughly between two screaming civilians. The way this scene is described, it would translate so well to a screen. Imagine it being shown from a first-person view as Duerker is pulled under, over, and around all of these dying refugees.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome, dude. It is, again, down to Erikson's amazing visual style. When he gets into the action of this stuff, I always feel so much of it. And I could feel this. I could feel the choking on the water as I'm being pulled under. You're pulled under, coughing, trying to catch your breath, being pulled under again, maybe here and there. You're like, damn it. Trying not to drown while you're drowning. You feeling like you're going to drown.
That'd be absolutely terrifying.
Absolutely.
Because all those bodies there, and you're underwater with them on top of you, not knowing if you're going to come back up. It's beyond anything I could imagine going through.
It's nightmarish.
To be honest with you, I'm surprised his arms didn't get dislocated as he was being pulled toward the shore.
Right.
Is she the only one pulling him along?
No, I say this. I don't know. Maybe this, those fellas had their coils of rope. So they had, their surprises just kind of come out of nowhere because they've been preparing for it for so long. So we're just kind of seeing the results of what I'm assuming we're just seeing the results of what they've prepared for. Why else would there be ropes there? Why would those fellas be doing that? That wasn't even told by anyone but them. They just did that themselves, I feel like. They're just that good, man. You stick this group with the bridge burners, man.
It feels like they're like the special operations unit a little bit, doesn't it?
Very much. The sapper, you've said it very much multiple times in this series, they are the elites. They're also a different kind of grunt, and they're almost seen as in my opinion, by the other soldiers, as like unworthy. But I don't know if they're seen as unworthy or just so historically we just don't even want to talk to you. We're scared of even talking to you. I'm not sure if it's awe or what, but the bridge burners, along with all these sappers, they seem to be the elites. They are some type of elite.
So bridge burners, we have to differentiate between the bridge burners as a company and then the sappers within the bridge burners.
I'm sorry, that's true. That's true.
So speaking about the sappers, when you just have sappers alone in a company like this, it's almost like if you combine the Army Corps of Engineers with Navy SEALs,
very much, very much,
and then you add a layer of PTSD on top of that from the explosions, almost like the Jeremy Renner character in that was the bomb diffuser. What was that movie?
Hurt Locker.
Yeah, that type of mentality for some of these sappers. You put that in a pot and you mix it around, and that's what you get.
Yes. But they do their, like you said, especially because we have some SEAL behavior with this guy. I'm not saying that he maybe should have cut this fellow's head off, but I mean, he killed the guy on guard. That's very, you know, what I assume the SEALs, those guys do. They kill the lookouts as they go in. So you know, these guys are they're special, and they're self-regulated.
I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing in a military setting.
It's not, but here they're working for the great and the good. Here,
yes. Yeah, in this case, it seems to be working.
Yes,
it may not always end up working this way.
I think it's. Do you think it's Coltane? Do you think it's that awesome leadership that's making these guys want to be part of it?
I don't know, because I would think that regardless of whether Coltane was there or not, they would be doing the same thing. I think they've just fully embodied that mentality of the Malazan military, where think for yourself.
Yeah.
And they're taking it to the most extreme that they can.
They are, you know, and what's so great and bad about these sappers are we never learned anything about them. We don't know who these guys are. We never learned any of their names as far as I'm aware of. The captain is legendary.
They shall be known through their deeds.
Yes. Yes, they will.
The journey seemed unending, battering Duiker with surreal glimpses until he was numb, an endless procession of pain, suffering, and ignoble death. He thought, there is no escape. Another lesson of history. Mortality is a visitor never gone for long. Then he was being dragged over wet, muddy corpses and blood-slicked clay. The arrows no longer descended from the sky, but sped low over the ground, striking wood and flesh on all sides. Duiker rolled through a deep, twisting rut, then came up against the spoked wheel of a wagon. The Marine commanded, "Let go the rope. We're here, Duiker." He thought, here. He wiped the mud from his eyes, staying low as he looked around for the first time. Wicked horse warriors, sappers, and Marines lay amidst dead and dying mounts, also studded with arrows that the entire landing looked like a reed bed. The nobles' wagons had been cleared from the end of the ford and arrayed in a defensive crescent, although the fighting had pushed beyond them into the forest itself. Duiker gasped, "Who?" The Marine lying beside him grunted, "Just what's left of the sappers, the Marines, and a few surviving Wiccans." Imagine what it would take to get those wagons out of the muck with no horses or oxen. Then they turn them into barricades, all while being peppered with arrows.
Yeah.
What type of person can do that?
These guys have amazing discipline. That's all I have to say. It's just amazing training and discipline.
Yeah, and it wasn't just the sappers in this case. It was the Marines, too.
It's kind of everybody. Well, we've praised the Malazan military. When the Malazan military has good commanders, they function extremely well in this universe.
And if the commanders aren't good, they generally get a knife in the back.
I was going to say, they usually get a knife in the back, right? So there's some incentive all the way around to be a good commander, right?
Mm-hmm. Who was it? They kept getting garroted.
That's in Gardens. That was the guy that they keep talking about like getting a new leader for the bridge burners in. And he keeps winding up with with a new neck wound.
Yes.
All these guys keep getting killed. And what's funny when it happens to Perrin, I can just feel, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was not me. Promise you, it wasn't me. It's like,
Duiker asked, "That's it?" She said, "Can't get anyone else across. And besides, the 7th and at least 2 of the clans are fighting in the rear guard. We're on our own, Duiker, and if we can't clear these woods," he thought, "we will be annihilated." She reached out to a nearby corpse, dragging it closer to remove the dead Wiccan's helm. She said, "This one looks more your size than mine, old man. Here." Duiker asked, "What are we fighting out there?" She said, "At least 3 companies, mostly archers, though I think Corbolo Dom wasn't expecting any soldiers at the front of the column. The plan was to use the refugees to block our deployment and stop us from gaining this bank." Duiker said, as if Corbolo knew Coltane would reject the offer, but the nobles wouldn't. She said, "Aye." The arrow fires tailed off. Those sappers are pushing them back. Gods, they're mayhem. Let's find some useful weapons and go join the fun. How many battles would be lost if not for the sappers, man?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, these guys, is this going to sound awful? Is this a positive endorsement for PTSD? It's
Oh. No, I don't think so.
It is not, folks. I'm sorry. I said that to be. I was trying to be provocative. I'm sorry. But these guys, the way that they just what craziness they're up to over there is enough to give these guys breathing room to kind of catch their breath and then come join the mayhem. It's like, dad gum.
I can just imagine they're running around throwing sharpers and burners and
yes,
causing all kinds of havoc.
Yeah. It's ugly. Whatever it is, you better. Yeah. I've imagined they've probably seeded the place with lots of pits too, so guys are wandering into small things, hurting themselves. You know, do you
think they have the time to get in there and do that?
They may have. They may have been. And even if they haven't, here's the thing that works a lot of times, and I think just the boldness of something like this when people aren't expecting it puts the troops, the other people, Caballo Dom's people, in a panic because they're like, wait, what? We're assured of victory, and yet here we are, like freaking out. We're running for our lives, and so they probably they may kill each other or kill several hundred in the confusion. They may hurt each other. That happens. It could happen. At least I imagine if you get them confused enough, and like you said, throw enough sharpers and all that other stuff in the air, smokers or whatever they got. I mean, please, it could cause enough stuff to be like several of themselves get hurt. So they're amazing, dude. Absolutely amazing.
To your point, the overconfidence aspect of the Apocalypse army seems to be their consistent failure. They always think, oh, we outnumber them. We have the advantage. Yet still, when things slightly turn against them, they collapse.
Yeah.
Now, the Chain of Dogs, they are suffering a lot of casualties too, to be fair. But they're taking the other armies out many times over what they're losing.
Yeah, they are. But the thing with the Apocalypse army has unlimited reserves, though.
Yeah, they have an entire continent to pull from.
Yeah.
And then you got a finite resource with the Wiccans.
Yeah. We're losing more by the time. We're losing each conflict.
Duiker said, "Go ahead, but here I stay, within sight of the river. I need to see." She said, "You'll get yourself skewered, old man." Duiker said, "I'll risk it. Get going." She hesitated, then nodded and crawled off among the bodies. Duiker found a round shield and clambered up on the nearest wagon, where he almost stepped on a cowering figure. He stared down at the trembling man and said, "Nethpara." Of course that piece of lard would still be alive.
Of course. We have to have someone to focus our anger on.
Am I being manipulated with my hatred, Billy?
Probably so. I know I am. It's like,
yeah.
Mr. Erikson manipulates me on all levels. And he, like I said, he's one of the few people that has made me cry. So yes, I'm assuming I'm being manipulated here.
Yeah. I will say Stephen King got me at the end of Gunslinger.
Dude,
with a couple things.
Oh, yes.
I don't remember if I got that upset in Dune.
I get upset, but not emotionally as upset, because Dune there is a slightly dispassionate edge to Dune sometimes, if that makes sense. And this is not a critique on the book in any way, shape, or form. That's part of what I enjoy about it. But there was a little bit more, Paul and those guys are so much more analytical. Mm-hmm. They get a little more distant because they get so analytical, especially once they get access to the prescience. Things get a little weird for them.
So back to Erikson doing it. I mean, multiple times.
Yes,
I've teared up already just reading these two books, and then just thinking about all the times through the series that it happens. Man, it's a lot.
It's a lot, but you're right. King has got me as well, especially with the gunslinger at the end. Oh, dude, two memorable deaths there that just wiped me out, dude.
Yeah, big time. All right, moving along. Nethpara begged, "Save me, please." Ignoring him, Duiker turned his attention back to the river. The stream of refugees who reached the south bank could not go forward. They began spreading out along the shoreline. Duiker saw a mob of them discover the rope crew for the upstream bridge and descended on them with a ferocity that disregarded their lack of armor and weapons. The crew were literally torn apart. The slaughter had turned the river downstream into a pink mass of stained insects and bodies, and still their numbers grew. Another flaw in Corbollo's plan was revealed as the flights of arrows from the upstream bridge dwindled. The archers had already spent their supply. The floating platform upstream had been allowed to drift, closing the gap until the pikemen finally came into contact with the unarmed civilians on the ford. But they had not accounted for the roaring rage that met them. The refugees had been pushed past fear. Hands were slashed as they closed on the pikeheads, but they would not let go. Others clambered forward in a rush to get the archers behind the wavering line of pikemen. The bridge sagged beneath the weight, then tilted. A moment later, the river was solid with flailing, struggling figures, refugees and Corbollo's companies both, as the bridge tipped and broke apart. I imagine the refugees are effectively purely acting on instinct at this point, nothing more than animals.
Yeah, that would be my assumption, and I could not imagine what it would be like in that crazy crush. Because I'm assuming if dozens, if not hundreds, would be killed just in the mad rush, especially when these guys are now angry. We have pushed, like I said, they pushed those people past fear. Now they're just that many people upset would be pretty scary.
Yeah, because you think of the makeup of what's in there. Children have been trampled, dead. Wives, their kids, dead. Your family, gone. You're trying to survive the situation potentially, and now you're not trying to protect anybody necessarily because you don't know where they are. They could be dead or whatever. You're just in a frenzy. It's really hard to put myself in that mental state. Never experienced it, probably never will.
Very intense.
And over it all, the butterflies swarmed, like a million yellow-petaled flowers dancing on swirling winds. And these butterflies are so integral to the visuals for the scene to me, a counterpoint to the brutality that's taking place below.
This always hangs with me, too, because this has been over this whole, because we forget about it at times that while this all is going on, those butterflies are all around and about almost all the time.
Yeah. That's why I think if this ever makes it to screen, this battle is so important to do right, because you have to capture the contrast between what is happening on the ground and the surreal beauty of these butterflies in the air.
Yeah.
And particularly also the color variance between these beautiful yellow butterflies and all the red and brown mud and blood that's happening down there. If done correctly with high contrast colors and the right camera scenes and everything, you could really mess with people with this.
I think so. I would hope so.
Have you ever seen The Cell?
Yeah.
The way that was filmed, there was some really vivid imagery. And, that's a horror movie, but that director, he did another movie called The Fall, same cinematic style, really high contrast. And The Fall had some scenes that were like this with a lot of color variation.
Okay.
That's kind of what comes to mind.
It's funny because we've been talking about The Cell here recently. Like we've been wanting to rewatch it. Not a big J-Lo fan, but that's a good movie. D'Onofrio's great.
Oh, yeah. And then Vince Vaughn was in that too.
Is he in that?
Yeah, he's the guy that goes in there with J-Lo.
Oh, but then that's all the more reason because I love Vince.
Yeah. Some of what I get here also is some of the imagery from Ghosts of Tsushima.
Okay.
Because that's actually a really good example of the way they did the set pieces in that game.
Yeah. Which
is coming out on PC in May.
Nice.
So that's going to be really cool.
I can't wait for you to. I haven't played it much. I have it. What little bit I've played, oh, my word. It's amazing. It is amazing.
Really good choices with the colors and the environments that they have. Yeah. So I think enough said about the way this is framed. Again, when I get the money.
Yes. Once we make our first billion.
The first.
Yes, we have to make the billion, then lose the billion, and then make like 3 billion on the comeback. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, got to have a comeback. Okay. Yes. Nice. Yes. Another wave of sorcery erupted, and Duiker's head turned at the sound. He saw Sormo out of the center of the mass astride his horse. The power that rolled from him tumbled toward the bridge downstream, striking the rebel soldiers with sparks that scythed like barbed wire. Blood sprayed into the air, and above the bridge the butterflies went from yellow to red, and the stained clouds fell in a fluttering blanket. But as Duiker watched, 4 arrows struck Sormo, one driving through his neck. Sormo's horse whipped its head around, screaming at the half-dozen arrows embedded in it. The animal staggered, slewing sideways to the edge of the shallows, then into deep water. Sormo reeled, then slowly slid from the saddle, vanishing beneath the sludge. The horse collapsed on top of him. Duiker could not draw breath. Then he saw a thin, lean arm thrust skyward a dozen yards downstream. Butterflies mobbed that straining, yearning reach, even as it slowly sank back down, then disappeared. The insects were converging, thousands, then hundreds of thousands. On all sides, it seemed that the battle, the slaughter, paused and watched. Duiker thought, Hood's breath, they've come for him, for his soul. Not crows, not as it should be, gods below. And that's a terrible blow to the Wiccans, and what a way to go. He had to have known the danger of exposing himself, yet still he went to perform his duty. And that's such an impactful scene.
Yeah, very impactful because, first off, I really like Sormo. We didn't really get to know him very well, but what little we did, I always liked him. But mostly, I guess, because he dragged them into some crazy places right before they started out and some other things. But I just really liked him, and I really hated seeing him buy his ticket to the farm like that. So sorry for that terrible euphemism. Should I said kick the bucket instead?
I think what cemented him as a really likable character to me was when they went to go kill that god, the Semk god, and before they did it, he told Duiker of his misgivings about what they were about to do.
Yeah. Made him more personal because no one had expressed any misgivings about what Coltane had ever sent them to do before.
To me, it showed a thoughtfulness to the way he uses his power.
Yeah.
Whereas some mages, they don't particularly care. They're just power hungry.
Yes.
He's very powerful, but he doesn't want to just use it because he has it.
Yes.
I think that's what I saw in him that made me like him.
Yeah, he's not power hungry. They are driven by duty, like most of the Wiccans we've seen.
A quavering voice rose from beneath Duiker. It asked, "What has happened? Have we won?" The breath that Duiker pulled into his lungs was ragged. The mass of butterflies was a seething, frenzied mound on the spot where Sormo had appeared, a mound as high as a barrow and swelling with every moment that passed, with every staggering beat of Duiker's heart. Nethpara asked, "Have we won? Can you see Coltane? Call him here. I would speak to him." Dude, this guy is delusional.
Oh my word, he's bad.
He's probably having a psychic break, to be fair.
He could very well be.
Because when has he ever experienced anything like this? Being stuck in a wagon that is right next to the enemy lines, all these arrows flying overhead. He's probably having a meltdown.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think you're right.
The moment when all stood still and silent was broken as a thick flight of Wiccan arrows struck the soldiers on the downstream bridge. What Sormo had begun, his clan kin completed. The last of the archers and pikemen went down. Duiker saw 3 squares of infantry dog-trot down the north slope, pulled from the rearguard action to enforce order on the crossing. Wiccan horse warriors of the Weasel clan rode out from the flanking woods, voicing their ululating victory cries. Duiker swung about. He saw Malazan soldiers backing away from cover to cover, a handful of marines and less than 30 sappers. The arrow fire was intensifying, getting closer. He thought, gods, they've already done the impossible. Do not demand more of them. Duiker drew a breath, then climbed onto the wagon's high bench. He shouted at the refugees on the bank, "Everyone, every able hand, find a weapon, to the forest, else the slaughter begins again. The archers are return—" He got no further, as the air shook with a savage, bestial roar. Duiker stared down, watched hundreds of civilians rush forward, caring nothing for weapons, intent on only closing with the companies of archers, on answering the day's carnage with a vengeance no less terrible. He thought, we are all gripped in madness. I have never seen the like nor heard of such a thing. Gods, what have we become? The waves of refugees swept over the Malazan positions and, unwavering before frantic, devastating flights of arrows from the tree line, plunged into the forest. Shrieks and screams echoed eerily in the air. Nethpara clambered into view and said, "Where is Coltane? I demand!" Duiker reached down one hand and gripped the silk scarf wound around Nethpara's neck. He dragged Nethpara closer. The men squealed, scratching uselessly at Duiker's hand. Duiker said, "Nethpara, he could have let you go, let you cross, alone, under the shelter of Corbolodam's glorious mercy. How many have died this day? How many of these soldiers, how many Wiccans, have given their lives to protect your hide?" Nethpara said, "Let go of me, you foul slave spawn!" A red mist blossomed before Duiker's eyes. He took Nethpara's flabby neck in both hands and began squeezing. He watched Nethpara's eyes bulge. Someone battered at his head. Someone yanked at his wrists. Someone wrapped a forearm around his own neck and flexed iron-hard muscles across the throat. The mist dimmed, as if night was falling. Duiker watched as hands pried his own from Nethpara's neck, watched as the man fell away, gasping. Then Dark's descent was done. We are denied Nethpara's death. Who do you think stopped Duiker?
Well, not one of the Wiccans. I'm pretty sure about that. But if I had a guess, which you're asking me, I would say it'd be Lull, I would think.
So that's interesting. Even though they could have gotten away with killing this dude, they do maintain some level of law and order.
Yes.
So unless it was some of Nethpara's minions or something, right? But realistically, I think it was you're right, somebody in the military, if not Lull himself, was the one that stopped him.
Yeah, because that would be the only, because they don't want to descend to this level. It's not a good thing. Nethpara does have it coming, but we can't descend to this level.
Don't get your hopes up. I mean, sometimes Mr. Erikson, he'll make you really hate some of these people and you're not going to get what you want.
I know it. I know you're thinking of one guy in particular, too.
Oh, man. And thus the chapter ends.
Wow.
That battle right there is a painful one with the losses.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's right. We don't know how many other Wiccans we lost, but losing one of those warlocks is not easy.
Yeah. That is one of my top 3 moments of this book, this battle.
Right on. Okay.
It has always left such an impression on me.
I get it.
With the visuals. I've already talked enough about it, but I have it so clearly in my head of what this looks like.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful, eerie scene.
Yeah, it is.
At the same time, heart-wrenching because you lose Sormo and all these innocent people getting messed up needlessly.
Yeah. I did enjoy seeing the people I didn't like seeing them push so far, but I did like seeing them, like, we just had enough, of them just getting on them, even though it cost everyone at the same time. They helped turn the tide for this battle for sure, because they were not counted on by Corbollo Adam. He counted them out.
Yeah, well, as we'll come to learn, I don't want to say too much about Corbollo Adam, but this is a good indicator of what level of tactician he is. If he was a chess player, he's not thinking 5 moves ahead.
No.
He's thinking of the next 2 moves, maybe.
Yes.
Saw that with some of the tactics employed with the archers.
Yeah. Did do some good things, but I mean, not good things, but go ahead. Let's move along.
All right. For standout moments, the group of sappers and their behavior when Duiker approached them. There's something about this crew and them not needing any direction to know what needs to be done that's quite admirable.
Yes, it is. And pretty bloodthirsty lot there, too. I love him carrying that dude's head, just chunking it right in the middle. They're like, yeah, that's lasting him. And we just kind of continue what we're doing.
Yeah. Didn't really need to bring that back.
No, you could have left it. I mean,
could have just left it where it was.
Just left it where it was. It's like he was enjoying, hey, got one. It's like, add another one. It's another for the tally. I'm like, dude, okay, you guys play rough.
Yeah, that's funny. The way Corbollo used the nobles to spur the refugees on in this scenario, he used their predictability in the most brutal way possible, blocking the ford with their wagons.
Yeah.
And then just murdering them.
Yeah. And it was a terrible, but yet it was a pretty good tactic. Well, it's not ethical. I'm not saying it's ethical, but it was just effective. But he could have definitely seized the situation a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he thought assured victory.
Yes.
He didn't think about contingency plans of what would happen if it didn't go exactly as I planned it.
Yeah, he ain't Coltane.
No. Duiker getting dragged over, under, and through the dying refugees. That's one of those scenes that could be done very well. It's very claustrophobic and terrifying to think about going through that.
Well, it would be absolutely awful. But this last bit of this whole dadgum chapter is nothing but just cinematic, man. Let me catch my breath. This is what happens with Erikson as we start ratcheting it up, boys. It's like, let me catch my breath, please. it's like, and no, it's on now. It's now we begin.
Yeah. The sappers, marines, and Wiccans that were able to make barricades out of the nobles' wagons, that's a really impressive feat given what they were up against.
Oh, my word. Absolutely. Totally awesome feat here by yet again, the sappers, everyone involved, but, the sappers, we you and I are biased. We love them fellas.
Yeah. And then them causing mayhem against Corbollo's archers on the opposite bank.
Oh, yes.
Awesome.
Priceless. Absolutely awesome, yeah.
Sormo's death scene.
Yeah.
Rough. Core memory for me.
Absolutely.
Always heavily impacted me, particularly with the way he died. it's a big loss.
It
You
is.
feel it.
I know, but I love that weird beauty of instead of the crows, you get all those hundreds of thousands of butterflies coming to collect his soul. Is still kind of beautiful in a weird way.
Yeah, it's not good from the perspective that he doesn't get to reincarnate, but it would be a very beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, it's morbidly weird, beautiful.
And finally, Duiker attempting to take out Nethpara while in a blind rage.
What does it say about me that I want him to succeed with that so bad?
We're being manipulated. That's what that says.
Yeah, okay.
We're being manipulated at our basest level.
Masterfully done. Masterfully, sir. Oh.
Yeah. All right, Billy, good job tonight.
Hey, great job, man. Great job.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
No, just what a great chapter. So chock full of some of my core memories of this series. Just powerful, powerfully uplifting and powerfully hurtful over the losses, but great show, man. Great show tonight. Great job.
All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.